Hey, do you believe in aliens? In alien abductions? Do you think there's any validity to this crazy UFO stuff? Do you think that aliens are maybe coming here to help mankind in some way? Or perhaps they're a synthesis of man and machine here to destroy our race? In the next Mystic Fix, we're going to talk to some people who think all of these things. And you don't want to miss it. Saturday nights, 8 p.m. on NewsTalkSTL.
Mystic Fix, a program for the whole being, with Julia Gordon-Bramer on NewsTalkSTL.
Welcome to Mystic Fix. I'm Julia Gordon-Bramer. This week's episode corresponds with the Wheel of Fortune tarot card. Typically, this is a card of good and bad luck and chance, but I took a different direction as it sort of reminds me of a spaceship. Which brings me to our first guest, Lily Nova. Lily is a UFO photographer, an ET contactee, a CE5 practitioner, a channeler, psychic, and DNA activator. So, Lily, you're going to have to define some of these for me. I looked up the CE thing, and that's close encounter, correct?
Yeah.
But there are levels of this now. So can you tell us what these levels are?
Yeah, so CE5 is essentially human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials and UFOs. So you have like CE1, which is seeing a UFO in the sky, and then there's like physical evidence that you can get or going aboard a ship. So CE5 takes it a next level where you are initiating the contact with them. So you're essentially inviting them in, and then UFOs appear. It's pretty cool. Okay,
so I read that you started to get all into this in 2020, in the COVID year, and so you haven't been doing it for too long. But can you tell us your story?
Yeah. So basically, we're in the middle of lockdown. That started, and a lot of places were closed. So what I did is I started going out under the stars. I started shooting space photography. I started shooting the Milky Way with my camera. I have a Nikon DSLR camera. And while I'm out there, I started spending like every single night out there. And while I'm out there, suddenly these UFOs started to appear. And
how did you know they were UFOs? I mean, you're already a photographer, right?
Yeah.
So you know what's normal, I suppose.
Yeah. I was spending every night out there, so I got a sense for, what is normal. What do satellites look like? What do shooting stars look like? What it usually looks like on the camera. And they made it very obvious that they were UFOs. The first encounter that I had was on my front porch. It was about like 2 o'clock in the morning, and this is in the middle of the suburbs in St. Peters, Missouri, like in the middle of the suburbs. And I went outside to get some fresh air, and I stepped out and I looked up at the sky like I normally do. First, I see a hovering craft above the neighborhood, a hovering light.
Like clear, like a fuzzy thing, or
it was it was a really big light. I couldn't see like a physical ship or anything. But
okay.
It was a really big light, and it was hovering around.
And
I'm like, okay, so that's not a plane, because planes, they go linear. They also have blinking lights.
Sure.
It's not a satellite because it was going in a hovering circular motion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bust out my phone to start recording that. And while I'm doing that, a weird orange light appeared at the end of my street. So it drew my attention. And then whenever I looked back, a second craft had appeared, but it was much closer. I was literally bending my neck, looking up at it. I saw the whole physical craft. It was a diamond shape. It had two lines of lights, red and a greenish blue. And then it went up, down, side to side very quickly. Nothing like what we have, the technology that we have. And then it started coming straight for me. And so I was going to try to record it. Then I started getting freaked out because it was coming right for me.
Sure.
I took a step back to kind of hide under the porch. and it vanished above my head.
So you think it wanted you to see it?
Oh, it was very intentional. It was very like they knew.
And so I'll ask you the question that I ask many, many people on the show. And so, not to be taken, in any wrong way, but you were not on alcohol or drugs or under the influence of anything. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, yeah.
Wow. And so after the eyewitness, which is C1, right? Mm-hmm. So or CE1, what happened after that? How did you increase these levels of experience?
Yeah. So after that blew my mind. I didn't sleep very well that night because that's a whole paradigm shift. I've never seen a UFO before. Mm-hmm. And it also freaked me out because they were coming straight for me. Like they knew that I was recording them. They knew that I was watching them. It was very intentional. And about a month later, I went out by myself to an astronomy park. Mm-hmm. It's called Bromelisk Park, and it's near Bush Wildlife. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm there by myself, and then suddenly I see more ships. See an orange light on the horizon. It's moving kind of like in a bumblebee fashion, going back and forth. I'm sitting in my car, and then everything starts kind of feel weird. I turn around. I look to the other horizon. There's another ship over there. I turn behind me, I look behind me, and there's 2 ships behind me. And then I look in front of me, and there are new lights in front of me that were not there just a second ago. So literally, I was surrounded by these UFOs, and I stayed up there until about sunrise, because at this point, I didn't know anything.
Were you scared?
Yeah, I was scared, but I was scared to leave because my car wasn't on, and I was like, I don't know if they know that I'm here, so I'm just going to kind of like hide out here.
Oh, so you were in the car?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in the car, and what I started doing, I was also very curious, so I just started recording them with my camera and my phone. And I sat up there for about 4 hours trying to wait them out. They didn't end up leaving. Mm-hmm. Once the sun started coming up, I felt comfortable enough to leave, so I left. I have some pretty decent, interesting footage from that night also I can share.
And I should say that your footage and story has been published in some mainstream media news, including the LAD Bible and the Mirror. And you've been featured on Coast to Coast with George Norrie and the Travel Channel on Unexplained Caught on Camera, which I've watched that show a number of times.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So that's kind of how it started. After that encounter, I saw them probably about 14 times in the matter of 2 weeks. I saw them like 4 nights in a row.
So much so fast. Is this typical? Do you know? Do you share with other people who've had this experience?
This is a little bit more on the rare side.
Uh-huh.
I have talked to some people who have had experiences like this, but none of them have been like astrophotographers that could actually like document the evidence pretty well. So this is, usually you'll get, because once I started sharing my story, then a lot of people started sending me their footage and sending me their story. A lot of time people will have like 1 or 2 encounters, and then that's enough to shift their whole paradigm. But as this unfolded for me, and they kept, it was like they were popping up in front of my camera on purpose. Uh-huh. And then a relationship
like individuals or just these spacecraft?
The spacecraft.
Okay.
I have caught one kind of like being on camera. They looked like a light being, so I can.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I can share that also. But yeah, these different ships.
Uh-huh.
They just started popping up left and right. So I began documenting them and investigating them, figuring out, okay, what are these things? What are they doing? What do they want? Obviously they're trying to tell me something. Mm-hmm. And then a relationship began. Then I started going out looking for them. And then I discovered what CE5 was, which is essentially what I was already doing, like setting the intention to communicate and make contact with them.
Okay.
And I went out, I set the intention, I invited them, and then the first night that this happened, and I have a photo of this too, a golden orb appeared, and there was somebody else there to witness this. They experienced the whole thing, which was pretty cool.
Nice to have the validations.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't, because a lot of the time they do it whenever you're alone, because it's meant just for you, usually. They're very specific and intentional about who they show themselves to. This golden orb appeared, and then since then, I fell in love with it.
You have been channeling messages from them, correct? And what kind of, are these positive messages? What kind of energy? Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's very positive. So basically, whenever they began communicating with me, they started teaching me about spirituality. I wasn't very spiritual before this. I knew that the chakras existed. I liked crystals, but I wasn't really into it that much. And so they began teaching me kind of basic principles, like we are all one, we are all connected. I was also studying the science of consciousness and how you can create your reality. So they actually began teaching me kind of like law of attraction and about frequency and vibration. And then they also started teaching me about our DNA. So they began teaching me who we really are in our history. Yeah, which was very exciting and very mind-blowing.
So is this like that aliens seeded the earth, like some of those theories, or ancient astronaut? I mean, you hear it all on the Discovery Channel.
Yeah. I mean, they're onto something with that, definitely. A lot of us here are, those beings, most of them are our cosmic families.
Okay.
So most of us come from the stars, and we have been seeded here. We have a mixture of different ET genetics. So that's why some of these beings look like us too.
I've always, you're young and maybe you don't even know about this yet, but when a woman is pregnant, one of the first things we learn is about the RH factor. Do you know about the RH factor? That there's a certain rare number of people who have this blood anomaly that can't be explained, and it can actually, and we find out during pregnancy because it can jeopardize whether the baby survives or not. And so yeah, and I always heard that, some people think that that's alien blood.
Yeah, I have heard that. I don't know too much about that, but I definitely think there's a correlation. That and O negative blood, the universal donor. That comes up. I get a lot of people that come to me.
Interesting.
With that blood type.
I've got sort of my own theory. I hear a lot of people who have experiences with angels. And I sort of wonder if angels and aliens aren't the same thing.
I think they definitely can be. Some of these beings, they do look very angelic. Some of them can be very illuminated. And if you look back and kind of like through Bible art and things like that, a lot of them had blonde hair. So that reminds me of these beings who I come to find. They're from the Pleiades star cluster. They're pretty popular. If there's a lot of people who have had experiences and sightings with these Nordic-looking beings. And sometimes they can appear to be illuminated and glow. So after I started having these UFO and ET experiences, I also began having experiences with angels. I didn't know angels existed before this. So there is a difference, but I do think that in our history, a lot of times some of these extraterrestrial beings have been thought of as angels.
Interesting. So have you hear about the abductions, you hear about the surgeries. Have you experienced some of this?
So they've been very respectful with me. I know that there are some horror stories out there. What I've come to find is a lot of these beings, so through time, especially now through this great awakening, things are shifting very quickly. The beings being born now, like the children being born now, they have more activated DNA and more activated genetics. So they will be more intuitive, they will be more creative, they will be more open-minded, the kids. And a lot of us who are drawn to spirituality, we have more activated DNA. We have more activated psychic abilities and intuition. So what I found is a lot of these beings, they are watching over us, and they may take us up on the ship sometimes and kind of just scan our bodies, check our bodies, just kind of see how we're doing.
In an unconscious state or a conscious state? Or both?
Yeah, both. Typically unconscious, but if you remember it, they want you to remember it.
Interesting. Wow. All right. And so you've been photographing them all along, this whole time?
Yeah, that was my big main start into it, and then it started getting more into kind of the spiritual, telepathic. They were very physical with me at first, showing me kind of the nuts and bolts of it. And then as I progressed and developed my psychic abilities, if you will, then they contact me a lot through that. But at first it was very much about the ships, the physical evidence, and that's what got me into it. And I think that's a nice bridge, because there's a lot of people who they either like want to believe or they don't believe, and they need that physical evidence.
Right. How do you respond to skeptics?
At first it was difficult whenever I started, because I asked them, I was like, you guys keep popping up in front of my camera. Do you want me to share this? Are you trying to tell me something like this? And then also, like, it's such
and you feel they do want you to know this.
Definitely.
Or they want you to share this, rather, to the world. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. So I began sharing it, and there are, there's people who have called me crazy, ask if I'm on drugs, and this is completely sober doing all of this. But I've really found through YouTube, I've really found a nice community who is open to it, and there's a lot of people who are now starting to have these experiences or seeing these things, so it's becoming a lot more open. So now I don't really deal with much skepticism. In the beginning, definitely it was tough, though.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I get enough as a tarot card reader, so right. I can imagine. Well, Lily, so you said people may be able to see some of this on, your YouTube channel then?
Yeah.
And how can they find you there?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is Lily Nova Starseed, Lily. And so I also do Sunday meditations that help people connect to these different types of beings every Sunday. And I have some videos on how to make contact and how to photograph them even.
So you think anybody can do this?
I do. I like to teach people how to do it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Next up, another less friendly view of aliens with author Len Kasten, who wrote Alien World Order, Dark Fleet, and the Secret History of Extraterrestrials. Next on News Talk STL 1019 and 94.1.